Heart first leadership isn't what you say, it's how you show up, how you regulate, how you communicate, and how you execute when it matters most. We are Heidi and Ryan Sawyer, and you are listening to the Heart First Leadership Podcast.
Welcome to episode 3, Integrated Performance Podcast. And today I have the most special guest that I ever will have on, and will have on again from time to time, is my beautiful wife, Heidi Sawyer. She's going to join us today, and we're going to dive into this conversation about creating an environment of growth. And what does that look like? What does that take? And how have we kind of navigated in our life to be able to understand like how important this really is? So Heidi Sawyer, welcome to the podcast. And I wanted to make sure that everybody knows like you are a part of this integrated human performance team that we're creating together. This writing this program would not have been possible without you and just all the back and forth. I mean, you guys should hear our conversations. It's nonstop of us just constantly either challenging each other in a very loving way, but always, just in this conversation of what does it look like to grow? What does it look like to heal? What does it look like to evolve and to adapt and to overcome? And she has an incredible podcast called Beauty in the Bean. So go check that out. She's doing her own thing as well as always helping me with everything that we're doing here on this little bit bigger stage. So I would say welcome to you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here. You were my first guest on my podcast, and it's just kind of fun to see it come full circle and to be here as a guest on integrated performance.
Yeah. So we're going to fire this off. So where does this come from? Like this environment of growth, not to go too far into the weeds, but to give you a little bit of context, I told my story a little bit on episode 1, how, there was challenges and obstacles that we had to overcome as a family and obviously me individually. And that created a rift, that created turmoil. Whenever there's turmoil within our own life, within our own experience inside of us, there's a disturbance. It creates a disturbance outside of us. And so the one that is the most obvious it creates is this most important relationship that I have is my marriage. And years ago, not knowing that the internal world, impacted the external world, we were in a place where thinking that this wasn't right. This wasn't right between the two of us, meaning that maybe we shouldn't be married anymore. We had those conversations, and it wasn't until we embarked upon this journey of saying, hey, let's go inward. Let's go inward. Let's work on ourselves, right? You work on you. I work on me. Let's come back together. And eventually over time, we, not only patch things up, but legitimately my very best friend in the whole world. Just everything is so incredibly rewarding and purposeful that we do together. And this was created because we did our own work. We created this environment where it was safe for each of us to grow and evolve independently and then come back together. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that sparks within your mind of just saying like how important it is to do our own work?
Yeah, I think that the hardest thing we can do is look in the mirror, right? The hardest thing we can do is to quit pointing the finger outside of ourselves and looking at everything else that's the matter with us and everyone else that seems to be the matter with us, and look in the mirror and take responsibility. But that also takes a level of having that environment of growth and having that support in knowing that you're supported in whatever it is that you find. Because sometimes when we do that work, when we do that inner work and we take a look at, the reasons why we behave the way we do, or we think the way that we do about things, we can find things that aren't exactly pretty. And being able to have that support just helps you to feel a little bit safer to dive into some of those places that maybe you didn't want to look before.
Yeah. So there's these 5 different elements that we're going to see if we can't breeze over the top of during this conversation. And the first one is control, is choice. Is basically, you just said, when I think of control and choice, is number 1 is knowing what we can control, what we're in control of, right? Our thoughts, our words, our actions, how we treat other people, and our own performance, basically our nutrition, our hydration, our sleep hygiene, these things, right? So there's these different components of what we're in control of, but also choice is to say, I'm going to take full responsibility, which I highlighted a little bit in the last episode, but this idea of saying like, hey, I'm going to wear it. I'm going to own it. Like, how am I playing a part in this? Mm-hmm. It's so easy for us to point the finger saying, if she would just if that person would just, then I would be okay, right?
Right.
And I think that's something that we learned through some of our shadow integration coaching that we have a certification in called the quantum living process. We both did that certification, went through that work, and it's in depth of like basically holding a mirror up in your face and saying like, this, your life is reflecting back upon you.
Yeah. How is, like, as a leader, the way that your team is showing up, or the way that, you know, your customers are interacting, or whatever it is that's going on in your life, or perhaps you're a sports coach, right? Like the way that your players are triggering you or showing up in a way that feels like it's against you. Like, how are you participating in that potentially? How are you creating a lens to be seeing that situation through maybe a past experience that's coloring it in a different way and causing it to show up differently than, you know, what's really there? We all kind of have our own perspective and our own perception, the way that we see things based on our own past experiences. And so it's really taking responsibility for that and going, you know, questioning it. Is what I'm seeing really the truth here, or could I be coloring this with my past experience and making this mean something that it doesn't?
Yeah, well, we're constantly coloring each moment with our past conditioning. So that brings something up in mind, that this idea of choice, control, and we have to understand something. This may not be conscious.
Right.
Right. This may not be in your conscious awareness. Like, there's things happening, a lot happening underneath our conscious awareness. And so, you know, talking about shadow work and how do we eradicate these different things, that's a whole different podcast. We're not going to dive into that and rabbit hole that right now. But I would love to hear from you, Heidi. In what way has putting the mirror up in your face, like, shown up in your world? Maybe it's your kids, maybe it's our business. You know, we have a residential painting company. I don't know if I've said that yet already or not, but one of the businesses that we own and operate is a residential painting company, and Heidi's very involved in that. And so when maybe, let's say, we're not getting a 5-star review or something didn't go right on a job, right? Hey, taking full responsibility, saying, in what way did I not communicate? Or maybe it's with the kids, you know, something sort of quality that they're showing up with or not showing up with, right? Something that is undesirable. We're going, okay, put the mirror up. So is there an example that you can think of in your life where you saw something in your external world and then you held the mirror up and said, how am I showing up in that way? Maybe with your daughter or
yeah, I can think of many
I guess
situations
our
like
daughter.
that. Our daughter,
Yeah.
yes. I can think of many situations like that. You know, hearing a kid have any type of negative self-talk, that's definitely a red flag, you know, for me. Hearing one of my children say something negative about themselves is a point of inspection for me to hold up a mirror and say, all right, what is it that's showing up here, and how is that also showing up for me? Because kids are just like little sponges. They can absorb so much, and a lot of it is body language, it's your energy, it's completely unspoken. I don't have to be saying, you know, I'm unhappy with this part of my body or the way I look here for my daughter to pick up on that.
So even the tone of your voice, right? All these frequencies and vibrations that we're constantly putting out. If it's in there, it's being projected.
Right. Yeah. Right. So I think that's
So you're saying that you've heard something from our 8-year-old daughter show up as a body image already, based upon the fact that maybe there's times in your life that you've struggled with your body image. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. And I think it's easy, you know, to kind of blame outside factors. Again, like we were talking about, pointing outside. Well, that's the society that we live in or whatever. But I'm about controlling the controllables. So I can't control everything that goes on out there in the world and what she may potentially see in the world. But what I can control is how I'm interacting and my relationship with myself and what she sees there. So I think it's really taking a look at, you know, what's the role that I'm playing here and how can I practice more self-compassion with myself so that that's the example she's seeing from the person who is her female role model.
So you want her to take more control of her own awareness and her own experience of life. You have to take more control. And if you want her to show herself more compassion, which happens to be the second element of the environment of growth, is compassion and patience. It takes time to heal, and nothing is going to heal and evolve and adapt without this sense of compassion. Like otherwise we're just suppressing it, and we're covering up with, all kinds of different things. Potentially it's either a substance or overexercise or food or distractions, right? We're these masterful distracting animals that says, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to look at this. I'm going to go over here and do that. I'm going to turn on the TV. Anyway, rabbit hole. You got to be careful. I'm a rabbit hole guy. But my point to you is that second component. Now, let me ask you this. Is compassion. So we talk about choice or control, knowing we're controlled, and then being able to show ourselves compassion, because what we didn't know yesterday, right, we can't judge, right? So here we are today saying, there's a part of me that needs to be loved, needs to be seen, needs to be allowed to be there. I need to accept. There's a level of acceptance that needs to happen and love myself as I am, knowing that I'm going to then be curious how to move forward. But let me ask you this. Has there been something where you said that there's this mirror that you've seen, right? Now, have you been able to see a result of where you were able to take that mirror and say, how is this for me? Healed something within yourself, like move beyond something, whether it be this body image or some other confidence issue or whatever, and then seeing it show up in your daughter or your son or your world?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a big thing that I can think of is, as parents, as humans, our brain quickly learns what works, and nobody wants to yell at their kids. But what happens is we try to be patient, and we request something, Could you clean that up? Could you clean that up? We ask a couple times, and then we yell, and guess what? We get a result. So our brain goes, oh yeah, that works. That works. Next time, let's save time and be more efficient and go straight to the yelling. Right? So
I can relate.
Yeah. So showing up in that way, what's the reaction we're going to get from our children? Or anyone, even if you're in a leadership role and maybe you go to more of a harsh way of leading your employees or disciplinary or whatever it is, like that's the path that you're going to go down, and then the response that you're going to get is one that's defensive or resistant or even defiant, right? And so you see exactly the result that you're not wanting to get, which is a child who's not going to listen to what you're telling them, and then it becomes a bigger problem. But really the root of the issue is that the yelling was coming from a place of feeling a lack of control. We talk about this control and choice, and then not having that practicing. We talked about self-compassion, but practicing compassion for the other person that you're interacting with as well. Because, as adults, we put our agenda on children a lot. We're like, hey, put that activity down. It's time to go now. But how would it feel if somebody walked into your office, told you to quit doing what you're doing and get up and leave right now?
not that you complete the circuit of whatever it is you're engaged in. So one of the things that I haven't said yet, that again, I've talked about in episode 2, but at a root, what we're trying to create with an environment of growth is a place where we feel psychologically safe, physically safe, socially safe, that we're not going to get rejected. It's okay to be me. Right? Because when we don't feel psychologically safe, then we're not going to be able to step out into the unknown with confidence. But if I feel safe, like no matter what, this place within my own body, within this relationship, within this marriage, within our 4 walls, within this family, wherever I am in this hierarchy of this system, right? If I know that no matter what happens out there in the world, I have this safe harbor. I can venture out into the unknown, into the open seas, but I can come back and I have this safe harbor here inside myself in stillness, in silence, which we'll talk more about later, or within these 4 walls, within this relationship, within my marriage, like no matter what, I can come back and say, I feel safe.
Yeah.
Right. So then I'm able to grow. I'm able to heal like this. Otherwise, our actions, our behaviors, and our ego are created out of fear. Right. And out of lack and striving and overachieving. So just to want to make that point, these different elements and this approach to creating this environment of growth within ourselves is to try to create an environment that is psychologically safe for ourselves and for our relationships and for our kids and for our teams, our businesses, our players, whatever we are, right? And if we can create that, then they're going to experience that in a way that they're able to adapt, overcome, be resilient.
So let's go back to your question about how has that shown up and how have you dealt with that?
Did we not answer that? I don't
think
remember.
We started going down a little bit different path there, but I just want to kind of put a bow on that for everybody listening and just say, if you're finding yourself in that place where you're yelling and things just kind of feel out of control because you're overcome with a feeling of having a lack of control and trying to control things outside of you for that reason, then it's really kind of bringing in that third part of the environment of growth, which is curiosity, and looking at like, what's going on here? Just taking a step back, becoming aware of what's happening, taking a pause, taking a breath, and going, okay, I'm yelling again. What's happening? Just with curiosity, not with self-judgment, but with curiosity. What's happening? And then showing yourself compassion, showing compassion for the other person in the situation, Yeah.
So, I think about mindfulness. One of the definitions of mindfulness is a non-judgmental awareness, right? Mm-hmm. I like to take the non-judgmental, which is kind of negatively, based, right? And say it's an accepting awareness. So when I accept the present moment or how I'm acting, how I'm being, my current state in the world or in this circumstance, if I'm able to be curious about it, like I actually am able to objectify it a little bit. I'm able to create a bit of a space between here's me and here's how I'm acting. Now, the more space I create, the more curious I can be about it. And now it's like, oh, that's not me. That's just accumulation of my past conditioning that's causing me to act and think and feel and behave and create certain outcomes in my life that, oh, they're not me. They're just, if I'm able to look at it, then I'm no longer this program. And here's the thing, when we start to talk about mindfulness practices and witnessing and noticing game and all kinds of different things, and we'll have different conversations with different people about that, create this ability to actually open up and see how the world's for us and taking this more integrated approach to life where, everything's a gift. We are able to actually even laugh at ourselves. Sometimes we might have a thought where we're like, that's ridiculous, right? Mm-hmm. Or we see an action and be like, oh, that's clearly not me. Sorry.
Well, let's go back to that first example.
How much quicker can we actually transition from one moment to the next? Anyway.
Right. Yeah. Let's go back to the first example that I said we're trying to patiently ask or request, and then we go to the yell. And then, so you can observe that and say, wow, my brain is really good at being efficient because it's trying to save me time and energy by going to exactly what it thinks worked. Mm-hmm. Right? But that's not who I want to be. And that's not how I want to teach my kids, or that's not how I want to interact with my team members. So how can I now just take a look at this with curiosity and compassion for myself and realize, yeah, you know what? I'm just a person here with a human brain that's doing what a human brain is supposed to do, which is to conserve energy.
And I'll take it a step further. What's happening, and I'm not going to go too far down these rabbit hole, but what is happening is you're getting some sort of a stimulus from your environment that passes up through your brainstem, up into your limbic system of your brain, which is just the second part of your brain that is your emotional brain, right? And this limbic system gets this flare up, right? And if we don't have a trained mind, if it's an improperly trained mind, then this part of our brain, this prefrontal cortex, this third part of our brain that is kind of this control tower, giving us control to be able to allow for an elevated emotion of sorts to be there, this disturbance to be there without judging it, and then we just respond to the environment, meaning I stub my toe and I get frustrated. And why did they put that there? And I can't believe people don't clean up this house, right? That is a limbic flare up that happens because I'm not able to access this higher control tower, this executive functioning part of my brain that's creative, that's collaborative, that's decision making. Now, when I learn to be able to give myself a little bit of space and be curious and to be open and to be able to regulate, which is the next element, when I learn to be able to regulate my breath, my state, to calm, to self-soothe, then I'm opening my ability up to train this prefrontal cortex. So therefore, I can stub my toe, and instead of it going into a narrative or story that somebody needs to clean up this house, it turns into like, oh, yep, stubbed it, and my day keeps moving, right? I don't make it mean something and then spiral down a rabbit hole of narrative and story. So I agree with you that the brain is trying to conserve energy and puts things into files, and that tries to just say, hey, that's where that file goes. That's how you act when this thing happens in the world. This is your automatic response because that kept you safe. It worked last time, so do it again, right? That's what you're saying. But also there's this level of understanding that we can train our mind, we can train our brain to access a part of our brain where it doesn't mean you don't feel it.
Right.
It still passes through that limbic system. You still feel frustration, but then you're able to breathe, open up, soften, and say, what else is possible? Like, how else could I respond to this circumstance? And this happens in a split second, but there's space. There's space between the stimulus, the circumstance, the disturbance, and my response to it, right? So this ability, which is the fourth component or element to environmental growth, is regulation, is this consistency of connection, I call it, or co-regulation. So if you know that I'm able to regulate myself, like no matter what you tell me, that that I can regulate. Now I'm not saying it's perfect. I mean, we aren't perfect, but we are constantly trying to evolve in a way that we're able to regulate better and better.
That's
right?
where the compassion and curiosity comes in, right? You step back and go, okay, that was interesting.
Yeah, but we're getting better at it.
Yeah.
Right. So that I'm able to regulate. I know that you're able to regulate. I see you regulating. You see me regulating. And together we are co-regulating, which makes it a safer environment. Right. The better we are at regulating. So this is an example where, like, I had Haley, our 8-year-old, got slammed in the face by a basketball. She comes running up to me crying, right? And I was in the middle of doing something, and this actually was a distraction. So in that first initial moment, I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't want to deal with this right now. What's going on, Haley? Right? And then I realized, okay, I'm going to go back to my training, go back to my awareness of saying she's caught up in this story right now and she's in pain. Okay, so I'm able to regulate. I know the number one priority that I have is to make sure that I'm regulated. So I slow down my breath and I become present in the moment, and I get curious and I say, what happened? And what do you feel? Where do you feel it? Are you okay? Do you want to go back and play, or do you want to stop playing? And she's able then to take control. I give her a choice. She takes control. She feels safe. Back to the basketball game she goes. Right? But it's really easy to not regulate myself in that situation because this is an inconvenience and I don't have time for this right now. And then now I'm not being consistent to create an environment where she's able to get bonkered in the face and feel safe enough to come to me, to be soothed, to learn how to soothe herself, and then be able to make a choice to go back and play more. And that's a great example of this co-regulation. Not perfect. I didn't do it perfect, but she knew that I was able to regulate. Therefore, she was able to regulate.
Yeah, it's like being that safe place to land. We are all leaders. If you're ready to stop waiting and start impacting your environment in a powerful way, we want to connect with you. Click the Book Now link in the show notes to book a call with a Heart First coach and discover what Heart First leadership can look like in your life and in your environment. Now back to the show. And so that you can go through those steps of like, okay, let's look at what happened. Am I okay? Do I want to get back to the game?
Yeah, and then she can make a choice.
Yeah.
She didn't have to keep playing. She can go sit down, right? She could find something else to do inside, play a game, whatever. But she had that choice, which makes her feel like she's psychologically safe. I think sometimes, as especially our youth, they begin to grow up and they're moving up the hierarchy within their system of their family, right? And maybe they're not making great choices. Our initial reaction as a parent is to actually like clench down on them and take more away from them. Well, if you can't do that,
take away their control and choice. Right.
Exactly. You take away their control and choice, which makes them feel less psychologically safe. It decreases, and without control, let's go back down this rabbit hole. It decreases their sense of self, which then negativity creeps in. It kills performance. They over-identify with their roles, their job, their sport. This whole vicious cycle. Right. Like, in all reality, we got to find a way to relinquish this illusion that we have to control somebody and allow for them to make their own choices, their own mistakes within a certain boundary, clearly, to keep them physically safe. So therefore, then we're able to teach compassion, right? And be curious, and then regulate together and say, oh, we made a poor choice, but we overcame it. We're able to stay calm and cool during this trial, and now here we are on the other side of it.
Seeing the gift.
Seeing the gift, and then giving our brain the experience that even though this was a disturbance, we got on the other side of it together. So it knows that no matter how bad things get, we'll get to the other side.
Yeah,
right?
which builds confidence.
Which builds confidence.
Right.
And I would say for you and me, like that's our number one strength in our marriage is to say, even when we are, kind of at each other a little bit, like we know whether it's 5 minutes from now or 2 hours from now or tomorrow, like we'll be on the other side of it. Mm-hmm. Like we've been through it and we've regulated and we've come back and we've shown ourselves compassion and we've been curious and we've, allowed each other to have that space. And which then leads me to the fifth element is optimism. Like this idea that there's a gift in everything and that I believe that this scenario would, if it's a disturbance or a circumstance, it too shall pass. Mm-hmm. It too shall pass. And on the other side of it is going to be a more resilient, a more adaptive, a stronger, more confident version of me, of you, of us, right? Of our team, of our business, right? And that's why whatever is happening and showing up in our life is for us.
Yeah, and that's such an important quality to have, that optimism as a leader, as a coach, as a parent, or whatever role that you're playing in your life, and having other people kind of relying on you to help them to co-regulate, right? Because you are able to keep that optimistic point of view and knowing, like, you know what, no matter what happens, we're coming out on the other side, we're coming out better.
Yeah. So is it about winning or losing? Is it about landing the job or not landing the job, making a certain amount of money? Or is it about the actual adaptation that's happening, right? Mm-hmm. That creates resiliency. And therefore then now with your system has a greater capacity for more potential down the road, right? As a human being, right? Yeah. Beautiful. I love this conversation. Could keep going down this rabbit hole forever. And now the one thing that I would just say is that, at some point in our journeys, I recognized like this was my role as a man in our family. I'm not saying it's a different role for a man or a woman. I'm just saying within my own life, I recognized that like I had to create an environment within myself that felt safe, that could grow, that could heal, that I could push limits with confidence, knowing that I could come back to my safe harbor. I've done that through multiple different practices of meditation and visualization and whatever else. And, and having faith, like having a legitimate, foundational belief structure that allows for me to come back to that safe harbor. Everybody has to have that as well. But, to really be able to grow and to heal, in my opinion. But this is our own work. Right? This is our own work to create this environment within ourselves. We want to create this incredible environment for our family and for our teams and for our business or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. I just urge that we take the mirror, put it up in front of our face and say, then create it within yourself first, which means like knowing what you can control and focusing on that. Showing yourself compassion for what you didn't know yesterday, right? To be curious about not only why you are the way you are, but how could you become somebody different? Mm-hmm. Right? How could you actually condition yourself to have a different experience of life?
Yeah, I think of that one, like you're talking about that beginner's mind. I think of that where people say, well, that's just the way I am, or that's just the way he is, or the way she is.
Yeah, you are who you are, huh?
You are who you are. And that's where that curiosity comes in, and you say, is that true? Is this really who I am? Where did this come from? And if I could be anybody, who would that be?
And how have you seen that in your own life, where you've seen either somebody or yourself or whatever it may be, your clients, where they were able to legitimately change who they are fundamentally?
Oh yeah, 100%. Especially I've seen that many times with clients where they had a story going into, working together. This is what happened to me in my life, and this is why I am this way. And we've unraveled that and really had that compassion and curiosity and said, okay, well, who would you be without that? And then discovered, wow, okay, actually holding on to this story and thinking that I know that this is who I am and there's no flexibility here is actually holding me back from a lot in life. And then once people get to realization and really start practicing these elements, then that's where they can come out on the other side and realize, okay, I actually have choice here. I have control, and I can continue to look at things with compassion and curiosity and move through resistance and difficult situations because I'm able to regulate, know I'm safe, and have an optimistic point of view.
So actionable steps, right? All great information, great story. It's all just information if we don't integrate it, and we know that information without integration leads to frustration, right? So you hear this podcast, you go, oh, that sounds nice. Yeah, environment of growth. Yeah, that's definitely something we all need to work on, and us included. So where do you start? You look at this list. Control. Like, are you focusing on things you can or cannot control? And B, make sure that you have made a list and know what are you in control of, right? Here's my second question, and we'll talk about compassion more in the future, but do you actually know how to? This is my question to you. And I didn't know. It was just recently, last year or so, couple, that I was like, oh, that's compassion. Oh, that's what it feels like inside my body. Oh, that's the release of something I've been holding on to because I showed myself compassion. Oh, like that is liberating. Not just like, oh, you know, don't be so hard on yourself. That ain't compassion, right? So do you really know and have spent time being curious about what it feels like and to experience compassion for yourself? Because I know that there's somebody in your life that you want to show compassion to, or you want them to have compassion for themselves. So be compassionate with yourself, right? And then to be, to create the curiosity piece and be able to regulate. So, I mean, you know me, I think that breath work is the foundation of everything, right? Breath work is where it all starts. Our life starts, our life ends with breath. And, we'll talk more about breath on other episodes, but begin to go down the path of being able to actually regulate your nervous system, actually shift your state, to know where your attention is and be able to place it where you want your beam of awareness, where you want it in one moment or the next, right? And to get out of your story. So that's a practice.
Yeah. When someone says close your eyes and take a deep breath, that's good advice.
That's good
advice. That's a good starting point, right?
But you have to practice it.
Right.
So because we're not going to be able to practice it when things are actually elevated in a rugged situation. Like if we don't practice it when it's calm and be able to regulate ourselves, we're not going to be able to do it when it's rugged, right? So practice. Like you're going to hear me say this over and over. Every conversation I have with people, I'm always going to come back to say, first, develop a version of yourself that becomes a practitioner so you can actually regulate, so you can actually be curious, so you can actually practice compassion for yourself, so you can know, and when you're in control and you're able to regulate yourself, then you're able to stay online enough to actually focus on what you can control, right? And then to be optimistic, to know that change is possible. I used to be someone who said, you are who you are. It is what it is. And my skin crawls. My skin crawls now when I hear that. And because I can tell you that I am my own internal environment, my internal domain and my external world are an example of saying, you're not who you are.
Yeah.
You are whoever you imagine yourself to be, and you're becoming whoever you're conditioning yourself to be. And you can completely change the construct and the concept of yourself, which will completely change your life.
Yeah. I like to say, get curious about what you think you know.
All right, yeah, let's be more curious about what you don't know, right? Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and what you think you know. Oh, I think I know this. This is fact in my world.
Yeah.
Okay.
But is it truth?
Right. Get curious about it.
I love that. All right. Well, anything else that you wanted to add to wrap it up, put it in a bow?
Yes, I think that we'll go ahead and add these 5 elements of growth of the environment of growth into the show notes for you, so that you can kind of take a little self-inventory and ask yourself some of these questions that Ryan was talking about when it comes to each of these points, and see where you have some areas of opportunity. I think curiosity is always a great place to start. So
that beginner's mind, and you just mentioned it. I think a lot of us operate from that place of operating with what we know, rather than waking up and saying, I'm curious today to find out what I don't know, rather than operating from a place of what I think I do know, of how I think who I think I am, how I think the world works, how I think other people think, what's going to happen. I mean, and we're talking about conditioning. We're talking about expectations that we place on the world. And this is how it's going to, and the meaning that we place on every single circumstance is what creates our outcomes and our experience of life.
Thank you for listening. Remember, leaders go first. Alignment matters. And the environment that you create is the legacy you'll leave. We'll see you on the next episode.